Hey friends, welcome back to another video. Today we are doing a bit of restocking using my I call it my mini grocery store overstock stuff. So I buy a lot of stuff in bulk. We're doing spices today. We also buy lots of our staple food ingredients in bulk, so like flour, sugar, rice, etc. And yeah, this is almost a daily occurrence. We're trying to avoid going to the real grocery store, so I'm using as much as I can from this stock up that we've done. And we are also going to be prepping some onions. I like to keep onions in the freezer. Here's the bag. I believe it's 12. I think it's a 10 kilogram bag. So that's 22 pounds of onions right there. But I like to keep them in the freezer. They keep great and they cook great from frozen. I don't have to do anything other than cut them all up. And it's actually so much more convenient to do all of that work ahead of time, one time, and then clean it all up instead of having to do it every single time I make a meal. So this is how I prefer to do the onions. So we're going to do that in this video today too. But starting off with restocking some spices. So we've got garlic powder. I believe the other one there with the yellow top is chili powder. I do keep some chili powder upstairs as well as taco seasoning. And so we're just restocking this one. And the other one I think is cinnamon. So just refilling some of the spices that we use on a regular basis, using our larger containers to refill the smaller containers. These are jam size mason jars. So they're 250 ml or half pints, depending on, where you are in the world. Everybody calls them something a little bit different, but they are your standard sort of jam size jar. And I have about a dozen of them that I keep on my counter in my kitchen, and we kind of just stick to those. I do have some more, like some other extra spices that we don't keep on the shelf, but those would be for more specific items. The other thing that we grabbed from the basement was aluminum foil because I knew I was out in my kitchen. So I grabbed that, and this is the one that I've showed you in previous videos. It's my preference, the Alcan brand. This one's like an anti-stick basically. Anyway, restock that, and then we're going to have some cowboy candy as a condiment for dinner. So on to the onions. These are massive onions. They're like this. They're bigger than softballs. I only know that because we played a lot of ball in my life, but you can see some of them are not in the best shape. Of course, when you buy things in bulk, sometimes that's how it goes. So we're just I'm basically going through every single onion and checking to make sure that I set aside the ones that are in really good shape. You can see on the far counter there, I put that one big onion. Anything that's a little bit soft, anything that has any kind of mold or, browning or soft spots or whatever, I'm putting those on the cutting board, and we're going to cut all of them. I do typically keep a few onions, like you can see in the background there, aside for like fresh cooking, but this is how I put the bag in my sink. So when I'm going through and cutting them, I just dump right into the sink, and then I can pick all of that up at one time and put it into the garbage at one time, and I'll show you. But here we are going through the onions. So I'm just peeling back all the layers and getting it cleaned up. I try to cut this first set on a cutting board or in a specific area on the cutting board. You can kind of see I'm cutting them sort of to the middle and left of the screen, so that if there is any sort of like yucky bits on these onions, I'm not cutting the good flesh onto those bits of kind of dirt or mold or whatever it is. So I am intentional about where I'm cutting the onions. That one was a little bit better of a visual, but we're just cutting them all. I'm topping them, cutting off the root and the stem and then cutting them in half. It just makes it easier for peeling and then easier for slicing. I have a onion video slicing tutorial video that I can share with you if you're interested in that. It's just a little bit easier way to cut onions when you're, kind of looking to try and be a little bit more fancy, or if you're learning how to cook or prepare food, I can share that video with you. Anyway, so keeping along with, you know, chopping up all the onions, I get them, every single one of them done, except for the ones that I'm going to keep in my fridge. I keep my onions in the fridge. They do last in there really well. And I just honestly don't have room on my counter to store root vegetables or onions or potatoes or any of that kind of stuff. So I keep them in my fridge and they last a long time and I never have any problems with it. So that's what I do. This is the last one. This one's huge. And I think what I decided to do with that really big one was, you can see there's a glass container on the far side of this counter. I end up chopping that up, and what I'm doing is onions 3 ways. So the first way, here, this is all of the bits and pieces that I just chopped off and into the garbage. See how easy that is? And you don't have to mess around with stuff on the floor and things getting messy. Anyway, so back to this, we're doing onions 3 ways. So chopping up this really big massive onion, it actually fit perfectly into this container, and we're going to call this meal prep. So for the next few days, if I'm cooking anything, I would be using these freshly cut onions, and they're lovely and wonderful. And I just fill the container, and you know, that goes right into the fridge. The rest of them are going to go into that bowl that I just showed you. I'm cutting them exactly the same way, just a rough dice. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're using these in things like pasta sauce or, you know, stir fry or whatever it is that you're making or cooking, that you would typically use a freshly cut onion. And I just use frozen and it works out perfectly. There's no problem ever. So here they go into the bucket, and we're just going to keep going. And I do the entire bag like this. Every once in a while, I will do some sliced onions. So, you know, more traditional for stir fries or pickled onions or something like that. But on this day, I just needed to get through this 22 pounds. So we just diced up every single piece, and we're going to get them into freezer bags. I do reuse my freezer bags for my onions, but I'm also intentional about double bagging them, because frozen onions do put off an odor that is not exactly pleasant, and as well as garlic. So if you are food prepping garlic or onions, my suggestion is to double bag it, and you won't have any problems with odor. So here we go. We have the whole bag of onions. You can see it's a large gallon size Ziploc bag, and these are the Great Value ones. I prefer using the Great Value ones for my inside bag because they just fit a little nicer inside the Ziplocs. I didn't have to, but this is how I do it. I filled up this bag halfway with the onions, and then I put that bag inside another large Ziploc bag. So we're just getting the onions into the bags at this point. About half of the onions will fit in each one. So, you know, for measuring purposes, 22 pounds of onions will roughly fit into 2 large Ziploc bags. You can see I only filled them halfway. That was intentional because this is how I like to freeze them, as flat as possible. I wouldn't say it's a single layer, but it's pretty, you know, it's a smaller layer. And the reason for that is because when I go to use them, if I need to break off a chunk, I can do that. Sometimes they break apart nicely and it's wonderful and it's all great. Sometimes they don't. So you kind of have to bash them around. But here are the 2 Ziploc bags. See how that Great Value bag just fits perfectly in there. And this is Ziploc inside a Ziploc, so it doesn't quite fit as good. And I just fold it down. It works. You know, you can get around it. But here are the 2 onions. So I'm super happy with getting those in the freezer. Here's the last look. We've got the onions in the Ziplocs that will go in the freezer, the fresh onions, and then the meal prep onions that'll go in the fridge. I couldn't be more stoked about it. And this will last us a couple of months. So thanks for joining me on this busy meal prep day, and we'll catch you in the next one.